The 38th time Lily broke into my home, she didn't even try to be quiet. That's how confident she had become. I stood in the dark hallway of my own townhouse and listened to my daughter-in-law shake my heart medication bottle next to her ear. She wasn't checking if I was alive. She was calculating how long I had left. Most men would have walked in and screamed. Most fathers would have called the police. I closed the bedroom door instead. And I recorded. For 3 months, Lily had been entering my house using a key I never gave her. She moved documents half an inch, swapped mail piles, lifted my mattress, photographed my tax returns, and then she told my son Ethan I was declining. That word again. Declining. Forgetful. Unsafe. She even suggested assisted living. Because if I was declared mentally incompetent, they wouldn't need to wait for me to die. They could legally control everything. What Lily didn't understand was simple. I spent 40 years dismantling financial predators. And predators always leave patterns. She thought I was deteriorating. She didn't realize I was building a case. And she had just crossed the line from manipulation to federal crime. Ethan came the next evening with the expression people use when they're about to deliver bad news to a terminal patient. Soft voice, measured steps, avoiding eye contact. Dad, we need to talk. We, not him. We. Lily had trained him well. He sat across from me like I was already fading. She's worried, he began. There it was again. Worried. She says you left the stove on last week. I don't cook. She says you called her Catherine. My late wife's name. I haven't said your mother's name out loud in years. He shifted uncomfortably. She says you've been paranoid about break-ins. I reached under the coffee table and placed a folder in front of him. Printed screenshots. 3:12 a.m. Lily entering my hallway. 3:14 a.m. Lily opening my desk drawer. 3:17 a.m. Lily photographing my social security card. He stared at the images. For a moment, I thought clarity might return to him. Then he said the sentence that ended something inside me. She was checking to make sure you weren't being scammed. Scammed. At 3 in the morning. With gloves on. Ethan, I said quietly, your wife has entered my home 37 times without permission. She has a key. I never gave her one. She said you did. And there it was. The pivot. Gaslighting works because it's subtle. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just calm enough to make you question your own memory. Lily had been planting seeds for months. She told neighbors I was confused. Told Ethan I forgot appointments. Told her sister I couldn't manage my finances. She even suggested a neurological evaluation. I'm just thinking about your safety, Ethan continued. Safety? Are you asking me to submit to cognitive testing? I asked. Silence. That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said. He leaned forward, frustration breaking through. Dad, you live alone in a deteriorating townhouse. You're 72. You barely leave the house. What are we supposed to think? You're supposed to think your father deserves respect. But I didn't say that. Instead, I said something colder. You've been having money problems. His jaw tightened. That's not relevant. It's very relevant. Credit cards maxed out. Car payments behind. Personal loans stacking. I knew because I still had access to public filings. Lily had been researching emergency guardianship laws. If they could prove I was mentally unstable, they could petition the court for temporary control of my estate. Temporary control becomes permanent very quickly. She wouldn't do that, Ethan insisted. She already contacted an elder law attorney. That hit him hard. She wouldn't. She did. I slid another document across the table. A printed email confirmation from the law firm. Consultation scheduled. Subject line. Urgent guardianship inquiry regarding declining parent. His face drained of color. You went through her email? No. I went through the courthouse. I stood up slowly. You think this is about safety? It's about access. He stood too. Anger rising. So what if we're struggling? You have millions and you sit here pretending you're broke. Oh, there it was. Not concern. Resentment. You could help us, he continued. Instead you live in this sad little house and watch us drown. I looked around the sad little house. The worn furniture, the modest decor, the performance. You chose your life, I said calmly. I chose mine. He shook his head. You're pushing us away. No, they were pulling at the foundation. And I was reinforcing it. As he walked toward the door, he paused. Lily thinks assisted living would be best. That was the first open threat. If I resisted, they would escalate, petition the court, request evaluation, freeze accounts during review. I watched my son leave my house, and I realized something painful and precise. He wasn't defending his wife because he believed her. He was defending her because he needed what she was chasing. Money, relief, escape from debt. Lily wasn't worried about my memory. She was calculating liquidity, and the moment they filed that petition, I would lose control of everything. Unless I moved first. She had broken into my home again and again. Now she was trying to break into my legal identity. That was her second mistake. Predators believe they're the only ones capable of strategy. They forget some of us built careers dismantling people exactly like them. And I had just decided to stop playing old. Lily checked my drawers. She checked my medication. She checked my bank statements. But she never checked the property registry. That was her fatal blind spot. 15 years ago, during the housing collapse, I purchased this entire townhouse complex through a holding company called Blackridge Holdings. Not publicly, not loudly, through layered entities. Unit 4B, my modest retirement home, was camouflage. Faded curtains, second-hand couch, slow movements, discount groceries. I let them believe it. People see what confirms their narrative. Lily saw weakness. She saw a 72-year-old widower clinging to independence in a declining property. What she never saw was the fact that I was collecting the rent from every unit on this block, including my own. I wasn't the tenant. I was the landlord paying himself. And I had allowed her to underestimate me for 3 full months. After the 10th break-in, I installed hidden cameras. After the 20th, I upgraded the locks. After the 30th, I stopped reacting entirely. That's when she escalated. She began entering at night. 3:08 a.m., 2:47 a.m., 4:12 a.m. She didn't take large things. She took small ones. A document shifted. Mail rearranged. My wife's pocket watch missing for 12 hours, then reappearing. Testing my memory. Testing whether I would doubt myself. Testing whether she could describe confusion convincingly in court. Then she crossed the line. One night, I reviewed footage from 3:16 a.m. There she was, gloves on, opening my desk, photographing account numbers, zooming in on my social security card, capturing the deed copy, not to protect me, to prepare for transfer. If they secured guardianship, she could move assets within hours. She wasn't just building a narrative. She was building an exit strategy. That's when I called Claire Whitman, my attorney. I need to change the legal classification of Unit 4B. To what? She asked carefully. A secure corporate archive. Silence. You're escalating. Yes. Within 48 hours, filings were processed. Unit 4B was no longer legally a private residence. It was registered as a commercial document storage facility under Blackridge Holdings. Federal compliance signage ordered. Alarm system upgraded. Insurance classification modified. Police department notified of sensitive tax record storage on site. Everything dated. Everything documented. Everything irreversible. Then I did the one thing Lily would never anticipate. I moved out. Quietly. No announcement. No confrontation. At dawn, professional movers cleared 4B. Furniture removed. Personal items relocated. The safe delivered and bolted into the center of the empty living room. And I moved upstairs, 40 floors above, to the penthouse. Private elevator access. Restricted entry. Full camera control. I could now monitor every hallway angle, every stairwell, every movement. She continued entering 4B for 2 more days. She didn't realize no one lived there anymore. She walked through empty rooms thinking she was stalking vulnerability. She was stalking jurisdiction. But I needed her to commit fully. Lily wasn't reckless. She was cautious. She needed incentive. Something concrete. Something immediate. So I gave her a number. $750,000. Not vague. Not inflated. Specific. I staged the phone call loudly enough for her to hear through the door. I don't trust banks anymore. I'm withdrawing $750,000 in cash. I described the safe. Mentioned hundreds. Said I would store it in the living room. Repeated the amount twice. From the hallway camera, I watched her freeze. Her breathing changed. She stepped closer to the door. Pressed her ear against it. Texted Ethan immediately. They argued in the stairwell for 12 minutes. I watched the entire exchange. She wanted action. He wanted caution. Debt won. Desperation always wins the first round. They left, but not defeated. They left to prepare. She had broken into my home again and again. This time she would break in believing she was stealing from a confused old man. She didn't know she was about to break into a federally registered commercial archive. And once she did, there would be no narrative left to twist. Only charges. And consequences. They came back at 9:14 p.m. Not to break in. To confirm. Lily stood across the hallway pretending to scroll through her phone, but her eyes kept drifting toward the door of 4B. Ethan looked sick. You're sure he said tomorrow morning? He asked quietly. He said he doesn't trust banks, Lily replied. He's paranoid. He'll keep it close. Close. She was already imagining it stacked behind steel. At 11:38 p.m., they left again. At 12:22 a.m., they returned. This time with weight. Long rectangular box. Heavy drill case. Bolt cutters. I zoomed the hallway feed from the penthouse. Crowbar. Industrial-grade cordless drill. Carbide bit. She wasn't improvising. She was committing. They slipped into the vacant unit across the hall, her old listening post. From my screen I could see them through the second camera I had installed days earlier. She paced. He sat. We can still stop, Ethan said. No, she answered immediately. It's a crime. It's an inheritance, she corrected. He rubbed his face. What if he's not actually unstable? She turned sharply. Ethan, he's 72. He lives alone. He talks to himself. He hides cash. He's declining. None of that was true. But repetition turns fiction into comfort. He said goodbye in that text, Ethan continued. He mentioned Aunt Carol. She died years ago. For a brief moment, doubt flickered in her eyes. Then greed swallowed it. He's confused, she said firmly. Which is exactly why we need to secure this before someone else does. Secure. That's how theft justifies itself. At 1:57 a.m., they stepped into the hallway. The night guard's break started at 2 o'clock. Lily had tracked it for weeks. She approached the door like she'd done this before. No hesitation. No shaking hands. She slid the flat edge of the crowbar between the door and frame. She didn't go for the lock. She went for the wood. Smart. The reinforced deadbolt held. The frame didn't. Crack. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Ethan flinched. She pulled again. Splinter. The door burst inward. Silence. No alarm. No siren. Just darkness. They stepped inside. Flashlights on. The beam cut across empty walls. No furniture. No sofa. No signs of habitation. Just the safe in the center of the room. Massive. Black. Bolted to the floor. Her breathing changed. That soft, involuntary inhale of a gambler who sees the winning card. I told you, she whispered. Ethan scanned the walls. Why is everything gone? He moved out quietly. That text was real. He shined his light on the red signage near the safe. Property of Blackridge Holdings. Restricted access. Federal records. He read it aloud. Lily. She ripped it off the safe and tossed it aside. Scare tactics. That was the moment the case locked in. Intent confirmed. They were aware of the warning. They proceeded anyway. She knelt in front of the safe. Spun the dial. Locked. She turned. Drill. He hesitated. Lily. Drill. He handed it to her. The bit hit steel. Sparks burst. Metal screamed. She leaned her full weight into it. Ethan stepped back. This feels wrong. Everything feels wrong when you're about to win, she replied. From the penthouse, I watched 3 angles simultaneously. The hallway, the living room, the stairwell where 2 unmarked vans had just parked. I had called the police hours earlier. They were staged, waiting for the breach confirmation. The moment the drill bit penetrated the casing, the silent alarm transmitted. No siren inside, no warning, just a signal. She smiled as sparks flew. She thought she was minutes from relief. She didn't hear the elevator doors open at the end of the hallway. She didn't hear boots. She didn't hear radios. Ethan did. Lily, too late. I pressed the lighting override. The halogen floodlights snapped on like interrogation lamps. Blinding. She screamed, dropped the drill, and that's when the door exploded inward. Police. Drop the weapon. Red laser dots appeared across her chest. She was still holding the crowbar. Time slowed. For 1 second, she looked confused, as if the world had betrayed her. Then she dropped it. Officers forced her to the floor. Ethan collapsed before they even touched him. Please don't shoot, he sobbed. It wasn't my idea. She twisted toward him on the ground. You coward. The irony was brutal. The woman who had accused me of cognitive decline was now screaming under federal arrest lights. The son who doubted my memory was begging for mercy. And I was upstairs, calm, watching. She broke into my home again and again. Tonight, she broke into jurisdiction. And once you cross that line, the story stops being family. It becomes felony. The arrest upstairs was violent. The silence downstairs was surgical. By the time officers escorted Lily and Ethan into the lobby, half the building had gathered. Tenants in bathrobes, phones raised, whispers spreading like smoke, blue and red lights reflected off polished marble. Lily was still talking, still performing. This is a misunderstanding. He invited us. He's not stable. Even now she was trying to build a narrative. Confused father, concerned daughter-in-law, misinterpreted situation. It might have worked if I had still been living in 4B. The private elevator hummed softly at the far end of the lobby. Most tenants thought it was maintenance access. It wasn't. The doors slid open. Every head turned. I stepped out. Charcoal suit, tailored, crisp white shirt, deep red tie, polished shoes. No cardigan. No slow shuffle. No trembling hands. The building manager straightened immediately. Good evening, Mr. Hayes. The tone was different, respectful, automatic. Lily stopped struggling. Her eyes scanned from my shoes upward. The suit, the posture, the elevator behind me. You live in 4B, she said, confusion cracking her voice. No, I replied calmly. I staged 4B. The lobby fell completely silent. Ethan stared at me like he just met someone else entirely. I walked toward them slowly. Measured. Controlled. You broke into a private residence 37 times, I said quietly. Tonight, you broke into a registered corporate archive. I handed the chief the updated registration file. Filed before midnight. Time stamped. Unit 4B. Blackridge Holdings Secure Storage Facility. He nodded. Charges include unlawful entry, possession of burglary tools, attempted breach of federally registered corporate documents. Lily's face drained. It's his house, she insisted. It's just his house. No, the chief replied evenly. It isn't. The illusion collapsed in her eyes. The worn sofa, the modest lifestyle, the grocery store coupons, all camouflage. Ethan finally spoke. You owned it, he whispered. I own this building, I answered. And the one next door. And the commercial property on Pine Street. His shoulders sagged. You let us struggle. There it was again. Resentment disguised as accusation. I gave you an education, I said evenly. I paid for your wedding. I covered your rent for 2 years. I stepped closer. I didn't let you struggle. I stopped funding your irresponsibility. Lily shook her head violently. You set us up. What is this? A job? He frowned. Doing what? Concrete foundation work. 12-hour shifts. Minimum wage. Company housing. His jaw tightened. You're punishing me. No, I said evenly. I'm giving you something I should have given you years ago. Which is consequences. He stared at the ticket for a long moment. You'd really let me walk away with nothing? You walked away first. That landed. He knew it was true. He had stood in that hallway at 2 a.m. He had handed her the drill. He had chosen fear over integrity. He picked up the ticket. You're serious. I've never been more serious. He stood slowly. Will you ever forgive me? I considered the question carefully. Forgiveness isn't the issue. Then what is? Trust. He nodded once. Not in agreement. In understanding. He left the room without looking back. I remained seated for another minute. Arrests are loud. Courtrooms are dramatic. But consequences? Consequences are quiet. They happen in paperwork, in signatures, in inheritance documents rewritten at dawn. Lily broke into my home again and again. But the real fracture wasn't the doorframe. It was the moment my son decided that what I had built was easier to steal than to earn. And that's a crack no locksmith repairs. Unit 4B has a new door now. The safe is gone. The lights are dim. No more footsteps at 3 a.m. From the balcony of the penthouse, I can see the entire complex below me. Order, structure, ownership. Ethan left for North Dakota 3 days after the hearing. No argument, no hug, just a bus disappearing into a gray horizon. Lily was transferred to a state facility that same week. I received one letter from her. I never opened it. Some people believe family must survive anything. They're wrong. Family survives respect. Without it, it's just proximity. She broke into my home again and again. I moved out quietly. I changed the rules. And I watched her get arrested. Peace is not loud. Justice is not emotional. The most dangerous thieves aren't strangers. They're relatives with keys. Thank you for listening. Calm justice doesn't shout. It keeps records. No, I corrected. I documented you. That distinction matters in court. She lunged slightly before officers tightened their grip. You can't send family to prison. You stopped being family when you tested my medication to see how long I had left. The words hit harder than the arrest. She remembered. She thought I hadn't noticed. Ethan's knees buckled. He dropped onto the marble floor. You were supposed to be declining, he whispered. I never declined, I replied. I observed. The officers began escorting them toward the doors. No sirens, no chaos, just procedure. As Lily passed through the glass entrance, she looked back. Not angry, not arrogant, terrified, because she understood something too late. She hadn't been manipulating a confused old widower. She had been provoking a strategist. And strategists don't argue. They wait. The lobby slowly emptied. The whispers faded. The building manager approached. Shall we replace the door immediately, sir? Yes. And the safe? Leave it. Let the empty room remind anyone who enters what happens when you mistake performance for weakness. The elevator doors closed behind me as I ascended. 40 floors up. Silence returned. I poured a drink. Not to celebrate. To mark the transition. She broke into my home again and again. Tonight, she broke into a felony. And tomorrow, the paperwork would begin. 3 weeks later, we sat in a federal conference room that smelled like stale coffee and finished illusions. Lily no longer looked furious. She looked smaller. Orange jumpsuit. No makeup. No confidence. Across Oatney. Exhausted public defender. Beside Mina, Claire Whitman, Maj attorney. Calm. Exact. Ruthless in paperwork. The federal prosecutor spoke without emotion. Video evidence confirms forced commercial entry. Warning signage visible. Defendants proceeded despite notice. Tools recovered. Intent established. Intent. That word sealed everything. Lily finally turned toward me. Robert, please. Not Mr. Hayes. Not confused old man. Robert. We were desperate. Desperate. That was new. Debt doesn't convert burglary into inheritance, I replied. Claire slid the plea agreement across the table. It was simple. Plead guilty to reduced commercial burglary. 18 months state custody. 5 years probation. Permanent restraining order. Waiver of marital financial claims. Mandatory relocation out of state upon release. If she rejected it, we pursued federal prosecution. Minimum exposure: 10 years. The prosecutor didn't blink. The footage was overwhelming. She had drilled into a safe, clearly marked corporate property. She had removed federal signage on camera. She had crossed from family dispute into felony territory the second the crowbar hit the frame. Lily's voice cracked. You planned this? Yes. Ethan flinched at the word. You set a trap. No, I said calmly. I stopped tolerating theft. She turned to Ethan. Say something. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in a month. Take the deal, he whispered. She stared at him. You're choosing him? He shook his head slowly. No, I'm choosing reality. That sentence broke whatever remained of her composure. She signed. The pen shook in her hand. The arrogance that once filled every room she entered had evaporated. She wasn't calculating anymore. She was contained. Officers led her out without drama. No screaming. No accusations. Just hollow footsteps down a corridor that smelled like bleach and finality. Then it was just Ethan and me. Silence sat between us. What happens to me? He asked. I opened my folder. Removed a single sheet. My will. He swallowed. Before that night, everything was his. The building. The portfolio. The trusts. Now, zero. All assets reassigned to a charitable foundation supporting victims of elder exploitation. You disinherited me. Yes, you had millions. I had boundaries. He looked down. You let us drown. I leaned forward slightly. I paid your tuition, funded your startup, covered your rent, helped you every time you fell. I paused, but help becomes enabling when it's expected. He said nothing, so I placed one final item on the table. A bus ticket. Destination: Fargo, North Dakota. He blinked.